We Own the Night, Chapter 2, The Ribbon.
Oh, now look at that.
I've never seen a woman here before.
How did she get here?
I have no idea. I was weaving a rope, turned to get a cord, and then bam! I see her.
The boys must be making a trap for us again. Is she even real?
She looks like she's breathing.
Why don't we take her to the orlop and check? We won't tell the captain.
Too late. Smee went straight after him, the slug.
These phrases seemed to come to Candra from the back of her mind, muffled and barely audible. She was still lying, some unknown power rocking her as if to lull her to sleep. But when she came to her senses, she caught the stench of alcohol and felt a dozen or so stares on herself, then opened her eyes and inhaled sharply. Several male figures staggered away from her. A whisper went around. She sprang to her feet, took a quick look around, and realized with horror that she was on a pirate ship. How had she come to be here? Had the villains broken into the Donovan house and stolen her in the hope of a ransom? Or did they kill everyone and planned to take advantage of her? For the first time, she wished she had Alexander by her side. As independent as she was, she possessed no weapons or martial arts skills and was therefore easy prey for bandits.
Calypso, is that you?
Someone in the crowd suddenly asked, examining her with eyes as round as coins.
What? I mean, who?
Stunned, interrogated the young lady.
Heaven has heard our prayers, and the sea goddess herself has come to us. O disobedient daughter of Atlas, please get us off this evil island. In return, we shall give you all that you desire.
The pirate standing closest to her stretched out his hand to touch her cheek with a distraught look. Before Candra could even draw back, a shot ran out from the stern, and the wretch fell to the floor in front of her, his face frozen, exposing the bullet hole, causing her to shudder with back against the mast. The whispering ceased instantly, and for a few seconds there was only the rustling of the waves. And then a menacing voice was heard.
Whom else need I remind what privacy and respect for a woman are?
A couple more moments of silence, followed by even footsteps. Even though she had just been protected from foul molestation, the girl shared her fear with the sailors and did not immediately dare raise her eyes to her savior. But once she had done so, it seemed impossible to turn them away. On the main deck, tapping on the heels of his black leather boots, came a man of about 35 in scarlet captain's attire, richly embroidered with gold. The sea breeze gently ruffled the luxurious dark brown curls of his long hair and the red-black feathers of his wide-brimmed hat. As he approached, his every slightest movement was imbued with grace. The inlaid hilts of his sword and pistol gleamed in the moonlight, and where his right hand should have been, something glinted insidiously. The lady forgot how to breathe, unable to believe her eyes. The crew parted, opening a clear view of her, and she was overcome by a terrible awkwardness, for she was wearing nothing but a nightgown, and in her memory there definitely was a blank space. However, the man did not study her with a hard stare and stopped at a more than decent distance, speaking in a serious, soft voice, suggestive of a sense of security.
I'm sorry we have startled you. My men sometimes forget that we are not a pack of wolves, but a group of gentlemen. Those who continue to behave beastly, I am forced to eliminate.
He made an elusive gesture, and several pirates set about cleaning up the body.
I regret that our acquaintance began on such an unpleasant note, and I hope I can still manage to correct your impression.
He continued, removing his hat with an elegant wave of his hand and bowing.
James Hook, captain of the Jolly Roger. And your name, my lady?
Candra, Bright Moon.
The girl said in a voice far from her own, then did a slightly awkward curtsy, hesitating. A faint smile crossed the man's face, but his tone remained unchanged.
My respects, Miss Brightmoon, and welcome aboard. You look hungry to me. Let me escort you to my quarters for dinner. It would be terribly rude of me to torture you with talk in the cold wind.
He stepped a little closer and gallantly offered her his left elbow, so as not to frighten her with the sight of a sharp hook. After a moment's hesitation, the girl cautiously put her arm around his. What else could she do? She was hungry and thirsty and needed to warm herself. Though she was hesitant to trust a pirate captain who'd come straight from the myths, he was the most pleasant companion of all present, and he led her to the aft deck, giving final orders to the sailors as he went.
Finish your work and don't dare come within a meter of the lady again. She's under my protection. Mr. Smee, serve a dinner worthy of our refined guest.
The sailors moved and stopped staring at her as James led her up the stairs, opened the door to his quarters wide, and stepped aside, gesturing for her to come in. With the first step, Candra felt the soft fabric of the scarlet carpet beneath her bare feet and drew in the warm air with the scent of candles and books, and only faint odors of cigars and quality alcohol. The captain's quarters looked extremely stately, even for the daughter of a wealthy diplomat. She felt very small, surrounded by a dark wood interior lavishly but not tastelessly embellished with gold relief and sculptures of angels, as if she had entered a Catholic church rather than a pirate quarters. Even the windows were stained glass. To the left of the entrance was the guest area, with a globe, a sofa, armchairs and chairs with red upholstery, a table, and a broad chest of drawers on which leaned a mandolin. In front of it was a dapper harpsichord, with a painting that looked like an illustration of a biblical story. Likely the main attraction of the whole ship apart from the captain's chair and desk, which were strikingly detailed. Along the right wall were cabinets and bookshelves, and somewhere behind the screen hid a bed. In many ways this room characterized its owner as defiant and arrogant, but also creative and collected.
Please take a seat and enjoy the decorations of my chambers as much as you like. Dinner will be here shortly.
The girl winced as the enveloping baritone brought her out of her trance. Hook noticed this and added with a hint of a smile as he skirted her frozen figure.
Don't worry, I have no reason to harm you, and the mishap with my crew won't happen again.
Really?
Miss Brightman asked suddenly, sharply, though her voice was ringing with nervousness.
How do you think I got here?
James, who had already reached his desk, turned to her with an eyebrow raised perplexedly.
According to my men, you appeared out of nowhere on the main deck. I was here and didn't see it happen. I thought you could tell me.
Are you kidding me? You expect me to believe that nonsense?
Candra laughed nervously and resented it.
What have you done with my family and the Commodore? How did you even find my home?
My lady, I have no idea where you live or who you care for. I have been in Neverland for too long.
He replied calmly, enduring her rudeness heroically. Her eyes widened as she gasped at the insolent lie.
Neverland?
She grinned, shaking her head.
What do you take me for?
For a shocked young lady of blossoming beauty who needs time to absorb what's happening.
Hook said honestly, a faint smile on his lips and a splash of his arms as he looked around the room.
Look around you. You may step out on deck and see that we are anchored off a small tropical island with an Indian settlement to the west and a mermaid lagoon to the east. I'm even willing to give you a boat so you can explore the surroundings and the shore in person. But not now. The mermaids are particularly active at night, and I would not want you to die here.
The lady had cooled off and was now deeply confused. She hadn't noticed any hint of deceit on the pirate's part, and she supposed that he wouldn't hold a grown-up woman as a complete idiot. Why would he tell her fairy tales? And would a man like him bother to memorize the geography of an imaginary island for the sake of joking with hostages? Judging by the legends, that was not in his character. Candra blinked confusedly.
That's impossible. I couldn't ignore the sense of flight and appear out of thin air, and I'm not a child anymore.
Neither are my crew or some of the Indians. Neverland is a mysterious place, on the edge of reality and fiction. And for so long, even I have not learned all its laws. I'd call them quite flexible. What I can say for sure is that you can choose your age and never grow old again. You cannot turn back time, but you can stop it.
She looked shrewdly at the sympathetic glance on the man and asked,
And how did you come to Neverland?
His eyes were at once vacant and thoughtful, and his eyebrows drew up to the bridge of his nose. He either didn't want to say or he forgot? The tale said that in Neverland the memories of the real world were fading away quite quickly. A pity if so, for Miss Brightman had so many questions about Captain Hook's life, and only a face-to-face meeting would have answered them all. One thing she did find out, though, was that he was indeed missing in Neverland. If it wasn't all a wonderfully vivid and believable dream, of course. Smee entered the cabin with an assiduous pant, jingling a tray. Under the captain's gaze, he fidgeted with dishes, cutlery, goblets, and alcohol on the desk, hesitated, unsure whether to stay or go, received a silent order, bowed out, and hurriedly retreated. Hook grabbed the back of a chair, wiggled his eyebrows, and smiled suavely at his guest.
Here you are.
She lowered her lashes to her rosy cheeks and sat down. James motioned her to the desk, walked around it, poured the wine the first mate had brought for her, sat down in his chair, and wished her a bon appetite. Muttering words of gratitude, she began to eat her meal, noting its high quality. Apparently, the captain was a lover of luxury and could afford it. She furtively looked at him more closely. He, too, poured the nectar of the gods into his goblet and stared at the map on the desk so as not to embarrass her. He defied standard notions of beauty, but there was an elusive charm about him that evoked a strong attraction. The graceful curve of his eyebrows, the rather short and broad nose with an aristocratic profile, the thin, dry lips under the moustache, reverently curled at the ends, the chiseled line of his jaw covered in stubble that grew thicker on his chin and formed a little line there to his lower lip. But most of all, the deep blue eyes, burning vividly on the surface and full of melancholy on the bottom. Candra did not know if he felt her gaze and hurriedly broke the lingering pause in the conversation.
Were you really Blackbeard's bosun? How did it happen that you became a pirate after graduating Eton in the first place?
Hook looked up at her, with eyes full of pleasant surprise, blanched in a smile, and replied,
I am flattered that you have heard of me, my lady. In the early days of my career, I did serve with Captain Teach, but it no longer matters. What matters now is you, Miss Brightmoon.
He waved his hand eloquently, holding the goblet and sticking out his little finger with a massive ring, and explained to the bewildered noblewoman.
A young lady from a wealthy family reads about terrible villains and longs to discover the whole truth about them. I sense strength, passion, and wisdom in you, an adventurous spirit, defiance. Isn't that what brought you to Neverland?
Are you saying that denial and an unwillingness to go on with my old life provoked me to come here?
She said, trying to follow his train of thought.
Exactly. I suppose I came here for the same reason, perhaps even the Indians, fleeing from the colonizers.
Hook confirmed, visibly perked up either by the entertaining conversation or by alcohol, and suddenly added,
Are you running from something, Miss Brightmoon?
She stared at him, assessing the appropriateness of telling him of her misfortunes. Candra was not in the habit of pouring her heart out to everyone she met. She certainly did not understand why the man was interested in her experiences, since he could not use the information against her. No, she could guess. He was just bored. He's been in this strange world for God knows how many years, sees the same scenery and dull faces every day, can't even get into pillage, and judging from the stories, constantly hiding from the crocodile's teeth and fighting Peter Pan's attacks. You can really go mad that way. But that night he got lucky. Right on the deck of his ship there was not another pirate or lost boy, but an adult, a girl, someone new and alien to this world, someone closer to his level. What about her herself? Who in her surroundings would have noticed that she was unhappy? After all, her life was the same as any other aristocrat's. No one cared about her spiritual impulses, and Captain Hook looked at her with such empathy.
Yes, I am. After my parents died, I was always alone in my life's journey. Uncle Samuel, my mother's brother, became my guardian. He did not deny me anything. He even allowed me to be educated as a diplomat, though I never went to work. But he didn't do it out of love for me. He did it for his own ends. If you had heard the tone, the way he speaks to me, the way he looks at me, and the way he speaks about my personal initiatives, you would have been convinced of that. Cousin Michael also stokes the flames, but he's just a gloating fool. I was matched with a consort today, Commodore Mello. He doesn't strike me as bad, but I don't love him, and I never will. He's probably the lesser of the evils, young, handsome, polite. But I value love too highly to settle for something like that. So I desperately wanted to run away and never have to face those problems again. Yes, they're petty. I'll still have all the comforts, conveniences, and luxuries. But I can hardly imagine anything morally harder than living in a golden cage with a man I don't love.
Candra narrated and pushed the empty dishes away slightly. She watched the candlelight play across the goblet, wondering if her honesty made her feel better or not, and thinking that she had amused the man with her complaints. His voice, however, sounded extremely serious.
It is astonishing that the disgusting habit of selling people into other families of similar status still exists to this day, especially women who for some reason are forbidden to provide for themselves. Such calculating and prejudicial attitudes have disgusted me ever since I realized what the words mean. Don't judge yourself for your worries, Miss Brightmoon. They have their place. And every feeling you have is important.
The girl only twitched the corner of her mouth with a wry smile and continued to stare at the goblet. It was the first time she'd heard such words, and she didn't know how to respond to them, and the borderline fantastical setting only served to exacerbate her confusion. Then James leaned forward slightly, smoothly extending his hand, barely touched her under her jaw with his fingertips, and lifted her head so that their gazes crossed. The lady was surprised at such a gesture, and in any other situation would have preferred to avoid tactile contact. But the captain spoke to her so lightly and thoughtfully, and showed her so much attention, interest, and sympathy that she didn't want to resist. She looked deep into his eyes, searching for a catch, but all she saw was a warm ocean of calm.
I am sorry, my lady, but your wish has, in a way, been granted. And you are no longer in danger of marriage to an unwanted man. I believe you deserve far better than to live on a godforsaken island full of unpleasant surprises or on a ship teeming with roughnecks. But I will be unspeakably glad to have you here, and I swear to keep you safe.
She saw the fire of hope in his eyes and felt his fingers tremble nervously. Was this the same Captain Hook that John Silver himself had feared? Though, if she consulted sources, there were more descriptions of his well-mannered and elegant nature. Candra had never imagined there could be such sensuality in a stern and strong man. Everything was new to her, and unwittingly she became a vulnerable girl before him, allowing him to see and even touch her soul.
I cannot so unscrupulously take advantage of your hospitality. What can I do to thank you for your shelter and protection?
Nothing. Just talk to me. I'd like to remember something of a normal life. If it wouldn't burden you, of course.
No, of course not.
She blurted out her words too quickly, which made her lower her gaze with embarrassment and slide it down to the hook in the shadows.
Is it true, then? About Peter Pan and the crocodile?
James took his hand away when he saw that. A faint tremor spread across his face, and he answered in the same quiet, slightly husky voice she'd heard before.
Yes.
Why don't you just leave Neverland? In the real world, the crocodile might find new prey or become a target for hunters, and Pan won't dare attack in the open if you stay close to shore, or will simply lose your trail.
I can't. Firstly, this is the only place where I can hunt Pan down, and I won't rest until he gets what he deserves. And secondly, no matter how many times I've circled the island, I've always come back to square one. I think Pan has the gift of flight for a reason.
Hook spoke calmly, but the observant Candra noticed the pain gnawing at him at that moment. So he stuck here, and so was she. And though this place offered eternal youth and a way to escape the problems of reality, she felt no joy about it. The monotony and the sense of hopelessness were poisonous, and the captain was also haunted by many troubles, as if he could never awaken from a nightmare. Her heart sank with sympathy, and she looked at the man in such a way that he froze, and his gaze flashed with wonder, bewilderment, disbelief and confusion. And then she guessed that for a long time no one cared what emotions and why he was feeling, and certainly no one was going to empathize with him. Realizing that the silence had dragged on, Hook got to his feet and left the desk.
Well, time to settle the sleeping arrangements. These last hours must have been tiring for you,
he said as he turned to the windows.
It is now dawn.
Candra assumed that there was no guest cabin on the pirate ship, which means she'd have to share the room with the captain. The thought roused her. She clutched the seat nervously and glanced at the sofa. She still had lingering doubts about the reality of what was happening, and unable to endure it, she hesitantly dropped it.
What if this isn't real and I'm about to wake up?
Thin lips stretched into a smile, and Hook turned to show that he was amused by the suggestion, but he did not intend to make fun of his guest.
A dream has no physical effect on reality beyond the reactions of the body, does it? Let me give you a gift, and when you wake up, check if you still have it,
he offered, walking closer to her. The girl had not expected him to be so savvy and was embarrassed to feel him towering over her.
I can't. The maid will ask where the jewel came from, and I have a very trusting relationship with her.
She blurted out the first thing that came into her head. James wanted to object, like if what was happening was real, the lady would wake up in his cabin, but instead he said,
I will not insist. In that case, may I cut a piece of ribbon on your nightgown? Wake up here and you'll get a new one. At your place, nothing will change. Is that an alternative you prefer?
His eyes were sparkling with amusement, and his eyebrow was raised expressively. He didn't try to please her, didn't flirt openly, didn't pity her, didn't threaten her. He just seemed to be himself and even tried to make her feel comfortable. And that fascinated her. She bit her lip, contemplating and suppressing the strange tingling sensation inside, then stood up slowly, straightening into her full height in front of the man, and nodded with an insouciant smile.
Perhaps.
After obtaining consent, he deftly, so as not to accidentally touch the body beneath the light garment, held the ribbon above her chest with his fingers, smoothly raised his arm with the hook, took aim, and in a lightning, surgically precise motion cut a long, thin piece of fabric, so that the girl was not frightened for a fraction of the second. Satisfied, James displayed his trophy.
Done. See what awaits you in the morning. In the meantime, I'll take care of your bed.
He turned towards the bed and went to change the linen specifically for his guest, naturally giving her the most comfortable place to sleep. Miss Brightman opened her mouth to offer her assistance, as she was suddenly overcome with dizziness and clutched at the back of her chair.
Captain.
He looked out from behind the screen with a mute question. His face stretched worryingly, and the next second he was beside her.
Don't panic. Have a seat.
He spoke softly, offering his shoulder for support, holding the lady's waist and lowering her into the chair. He called loudly to his assistant. Candra remembered the feel of the captain's warm, firm palm on her body, but remembered nothing further. She was pulled back into the maelstrom, but suddenly she was up and out of it, inhaling greedily, lifting her eyelids. Her eyelashes flicked across the pillow, the outline of a familiar room in emerald and lilac tones looming in the darkness. Her bedroom? The girl sat up on the bed, feeling genuinely amazed, despite her thoughts earlier. The picture of memories was too clear. She remembered all the smells, sounds, sensations, words, details of faces and clothes. The lady threw back the blanket, rose, strode to the balcony, pulled back the curtains. The first rays of sunlight filtered through the gap as dawn broke over the port. Candra glanced down at her nightgown, and her skin went into goosebumps. The ribbon on it had been cut.